I hope you guys like Fox Girls. Hello everyone, Soberoni of Gene Day Reviews here with a servant spotlight for one of the upcoming EOR 4 servants. This time we'll be taking a look at the servant voted most likely to ruin your No Nut November, Caster of Midrash. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers to how to utilize her effectively and an overall grade, comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 4-star servants. Now, on the Caster stats. Caster has a max HP of 12,127 and a max attack of 8,629, which becomes 7,766 due to her caster damage modifier. Her HP is very high for a 4-star caster, while her attack is just about average. Compared to the other 4-star servants on the whole, her HP remains very high, although as expected of a caster, her attack is quite low. Overall, Caster of Midrash has a pretty good stat spread considering her class, with very high HP and respectable attack for a caster. Taking a look at her skills, her first skill is Charisma rank B-. It increases the attack of all allies for 3 turns, between 8.9 and 17.9% depending on level. Her second skill is Spirit's Eye rank A. It increases her crit strength for 1 turn between 50 and 100% depending on level, and it also applies Ignore Invincibility for 1 turn. And finally, her last skill is Wisdom of the Demon Gods. It increases the arts and buster card effectiveness of all allies for 3 turns between 10 and 20% depending on level, and it also grants 10 crit stars. As for passives, she has Territory Creation rank C, which increases her art card effectiveness by 6%, and Magic Resistance rank A, which increases her debuff resist by 20%. Moving on to her deck and Noble Phantasm, Caster has a Arts Buster deck with Quick Arts Buster Buster and an Arts Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is 3 Enigmas. It deals significant damage to a single enemy with between a 900% and 1500% damage modifier depending on level, and it also decreases that enemy's defense and attack for 3 turns between 10 and 30% depending on overcharge. It also decreases their HP recovery amount for 3 turns between 30 and 70% depending on overcharge. Taking a closer look at her cards, we see that her quick card hits 4 times, her arts hits 3 times, her buster hits 4 times, and her extra attack hits 5 times. She has an NP gain rate of 0.81% and a star rate of 10.8%. She has great NP gain due to that high NP gain rate and a 3-hit arts, but average star generating from just 1 quick card. There's no doubt that Caster of Midrash's beauty lives up to that of her true identity, but how well does she fare as a servant? Well, despite the high HP stat, Caster's most impressive attribute is actually her NP gain. Thanks to her high NP gain rate and multi-hit arts cards, she is one of the few servants capable of quickly charging her NP gauge from 0 to 100 even without an NP charging skill. Speaking of skills, Midrash Caster differs greatly here from most other casters in that her skill set is heavily offensive. Her first skill is just a basic Charisma, a bit on the weaker side, but it still manages to provide a party-wide attack buff on a low cooldown, so it's always going to be good. She also packs another team-wide buff in Wisdom of the Demon Gods. It buffs the Arch card and Buster card effectiveness of your entire team by 20% for 3 turns, and it also grants 10 crit stars. This has perfect synergy with Charisma, as the buffs are going to stack multiplicatively, which ends up resulting in a 41% damage buff for your team's Arts and Buster cards, including her own, which is nothing to scoff at. To further hammer home how offensive she is, Caster also has Spirit's Eye, a skill that allows her to ignore invincibility and gives her a gigantic 100% buff to crit damage for a turn. The crit buff is huge, and if timed properly can lead to some explosive burst damage. You'll want to prioritize Wisdom of the Demon Gods first, as that is your strongest overall card buff, followed by Spirit's Eye for that insane crit damage, and then finally Charisma because it is slightly weaker than most other Charismas. Caster's NP is befitting of her offensive nature. It is a single target arts attack that also lowers enemy defense, attack, and HP recovery. The HP recovery debuff is negligible, but the defense and attack down effects aren't. While the percentages may seem low, keep in mind that Caster can easily NP spam, and thus stack the debuffs, which can often lead to enemies having a 20 or even 30% debuff to defense and attack, greatly softening them up for your other attacks and ally NPs. But of course, the main purpose of this Noble Phantasm is simply to deal damage. which it does well thanks in large part to Caster's other buffs. It isn't the hardest hitting NP in the world, but again, keep in mind the spammability. It makes it very easy to get off 2 or even 3 NPs in short succession, so the damage adds up. In fact, the damage adds up should be Caster of Midrash's mantra, because despite being a caster, she is one of the best DPS 4-star servants out there, and her overall damage is leagues above most other casters. Her short cooldown party-wide buffs allow her to deal constant damage without just having to rely on her NP like most other casters do. And they also greatly elevate your team's overall damage, making her an excellent offense support hybrid. And yet, even with steady DPS, she isn't shy about unloading her burst damage on enemies either. Spirit's Eye makes her capable of some very high single target damage every so often, if she can be provided crit stars. If you can time Spirit's Eye with your Noble Phantasm Brave Chain, the damage output can be quite scary. Simply put, Caster is a servant with a very basic but very versatile skill set that allows her to both provide support and push out steady damage and burst damage. All that said though, she is still a caster and she does still have that 0.9 damage modifier. So even though she is capable of spamming NPs and crits, even at her best, she doesn't quite match up to some of the elite 4-star art servants like Saberlot, Yagyu, or Kuro. She also has 2 major shortcomings. One is her lack of any defensive skills, which means that she is heavily reliant on supports to protect her, and 2 is her lack of star weight buffing, which means that her crits are very unreliable, and she's difficult to set up, and that counts for a large portion of her damage. Still though, what she does offer to set herself apart from the other offensive art servants is her great team synergy. Caster fits into quite a few arts and buster teams, both as a damage dealer and light support buffer, but if you are using her, you need to make sure that you have a servant capable of protecting her. Jean, Irisveal, and Danzo are all good options for defense. Jean is optimal because she provides hard defense, healing, and stars from her first skill. Irisveal is a good budget option if you don't have Jean, since she can also heal and grant guts, while Danzo can provide stars for Caster while also protecting her with evade and invincibility. Offensively though, you're going to want to prioritize pairing Caster with the best star generators you have to make full use of her crit skills. Servants like Caster Gil, Brynhilda, and Mozart. Caster Gil is one of the best arts buffers and star generators in the game, and his synergy with Caster Midrash is through the roof since they can both buff each other. Bryn's targetable star weight ability makes up for Caster's own lack of his star gather buff, making her much more reliable. And finally, Mozart's Star Bomb skill is excellent here as it guarantees all your cards you're going to crit, which makes it the perfect setup for Caster's Spirit Eye skill. Caster's Bondcraft Essence is tribute to King Solomon. It buffs all allies' arts and buster card effectiveness by 10% while she's on the field. This is a good Bondcraft Essence as it does have synergy with your third skill, so it's worth using if you're playing more of a support role. However, if you're going for pure offense, which I suggest you do, you should try to maximize your NP and arts damage as much as possible. Dive to Blue, Formalcraft, Black Grail, and Collide Sapphire are all good choices here, especially Black Grail if you have a healer like Jean or Irisveal. If you prefer to rely more on crits as your main source of damage, then Another Ending is good, as are Seal Designation Enforcer, Leisurely Stroll, and Talk of the Hot Sands. Those latter 3 are all going to buff your Star Absorb, which Caster desperately needs. For the future, be on the lookout for Royal Icing next Halloween, or Avalon Celebrate during New Year's. Royal Icing is great for MP spam focus builds, while Avalon Celebrate is better for crits since it buffs your Star Absorb. Overall, Caster of Midrash is a very strong offensive caster. She packs a ton of damage both in her standard card attacks and in her NP spam. She also has great burst potential due to her huge crit buff, and she can provide good offensive support to the team as well with Charisma and Wisdom of the Demon Gods. She does have some flaws like a lack of defense and lack of Star Absorb, and her class really holds her back from being an otherwise elite offensive servant. But all in all, she gets an A from me. She's a simple but effective servant. She's a rare caster capable of high damage output and can be extremely effective in crit teams. And even though she doesn't reach the pinnacle of DPS, she does separate herself from the rest of the offensive pack by managing to be a good support as well. And those are my thoughts on Caster of Midrash. I think she's helped a bit by the fact that she doesn't really have much competition from the other single target casters outside of the 5 stars, but she's absolutely worth going for if you need a caster with power. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. So, Brony out. Later.